Kedar, what's up? It is time. It is finally time to talk about our first ever tryst with the PlayStation 5. And
Yep.
we have a couple of them lined up, of course, but uh, we are beginning with one of the most acclaimed games of the year and a
According to
PlayStation,
us.
according to us and a lot of people, by the way, on the
Yeah,
internet.
actually, quite a few.
And this game that we're talking about today is, of course, Returnal by Housemarque. And Kedar has very kindly put up the disc in front of us on screen. It is a game
I'm
to
so
talk about.
proud that I own this.
Very, very proud, well worth the price, in my opinion. But we're going to come to a lot of points as well as the price point in the later segments of this particular podcast today.
Yep.
So today's, I'm going to go ahead and call this In Focus. Today's In Focus podcast is going to be Returnal. We are going to be talking about all things Returnal by Housemarque. Housemarque, as you well,
Everything.
everything right from
Spoilers included. So,
spoilers included. Yes, absolutely. So if you are someone who intends to play this game, big, bold, blaring disclaimer,
do
spoiler
not watch
alert.
this video.
Do not watch this video till you've played the game. We're going to be
Yep.
talking absolutely everything about this game, what we like, what we don't like, what we dislike, what we would recommend, not recommend, uh, what captivated our attention, and what we felt was left wanting per se.
Pretty
All right,
much.
let's start off, Kedar. First impressions. Just
First impressions.
rant,
So, I got this game
rave
on my
and rant.
birthday.
Yes.
Okay. And here's what happened. I played it for 6 days straight. And I got so frustrated with it that I had to put it away. I got so frustrated with it because there
Sounds
was just
familiar.
no progress. There was no progress. I couldn't get to the first boss.
Yeah.
And I just put it away. And then I got to the first boss. I started learning some of the mechanics of the game. But my dumbass didn't read any of the tutorials. So
I'm going to talk
as
about this
things
in
go,
length. Yeah.
as things go, Kedar got a little cocky and he didn't quite read the tutorials. And now he'll stop talking about himself in the third person.
The third person. I think
And
Celine
so
has got to you, Kedar.
got to me, yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I ultimately got to who the first boss, who is who we lovingly call Firki,
Firki.
but
Yeah.
is Frike,
It's fright. Yeah.
and managed to beat them in what was 5 tries back then. And ever since I've been hooked until I stopped playing again because I got frustrated again.
And where was that?
And that was like a month ago. So I
Mhm.
managed to finish Ratchet and Clank within that 1 month,
Mhm.
and I got back to it. And that's when I came up with my first impressions, because when you begin this game and you go in knowing nothing, right? It is very deceiving.
Yep.
It is not friendly. From the get-go, there is a lot to pick up, there is a lot to master, there is a lot to learn. And it's easy to learn, but it's hard to master. It's one of those games that, like, you ponder over it for like a second, like you'll think about it for a day, and something will make your trigger finger itch.
Yeah.
You know, every death will play out in your head. Much, we'll come back to the lore, but there's a hint right there.
Yeah.
Every death will play out in your head, like, I fucked up here, or I regret doing that. Maybe I shouldn't have gone through that door. And holy shit, if you've got that feeling, it's got you in its hooks. It's
Yep.
got you in its hooks, and it's roping you in, and it's reeling you in. And if you resist, my friend, you're making a mistake. Do not resist. Let it pull you in. That's all I'll say for first impressions. There's
All
so
right.
much more we got to talk about.
Oh, we have a lot to talk about. So let me take an opportunity here to talk about my first impressions because it was quite interesting, and it's come at a time when I got my hands on the PlayStation, and obviously I have. Let me just count. I bought like 5 DVDs at the same time. Uh, Returnal, Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Last of Us, the remastered version, and what are the other two I forgot? Demon Souls, of course,
Demon
not there, and
Souls.
Ratchet and Clank. Yep. So these are the 5 DVDs that I bought at the same time, and it got me in a bit of a dilemma. What do I start with? Because there was the whole frenzy of, oh my god, I finally have my PlayStation. What do I begin with? And I just like loaded Ratchet. I didn't load Ratchet. I loaded Returnal and Demon Souls together. And they're extremely frustrating games to start a new generation of gaming with. Okay.
Pretty much.
Demon Souls, yeah, great. I'm going to talk about Demon Souls in a separate podcast that we have lined up as well. But fantastic game. Uh, my first tryst with a Soulsborne adventure, which is absolutely a joy to behold. And then I jumped from Demon Souls, which is frustrating enough as it is for a new player like me, straight into the realm of Returnal. And oh boy, this game is something. So let me start with the first things that like caught my attention. The first thing that really caught my attention was obviously the dual sense. The implementation of the dual sense is chef's kiss. Absolutely loved the adaptive triggers. It might not be for everyone. I do believe that Housemarque has given people the opportunity to uh, alter the controls if they want to, because it
Yeah, they
can
do.
get a little overwhelming because the game throws you into the game and you're like, okay, what do I do? How do I use the adaptive triggers? How does it work? But
Yeah.
once you get used to it, it's a joy to behold. So I'm going to start my first impressions by saying that the DualSense and Returnal, they work together like a charm. Uh, Let me talk about the game itself. It is addictively frustrating. That's the game that I'll call it. That's the way I'd phrase this particular experience. Uh, Addictive because it's actually so good. It is so simple, it's so lucid in its theoretical concept. The way it puts you into the game, it gives you a very simple premise. You're an Astra scout called Celine Vassos, half American, half Greek, crashed onto an alien planet seemingly, and you need to survive. Essentially, you're just told to
Pretty
survive.
much.
You're given a very cryptic objective, which is find the White Shadow broadcast,
Hmm.
and that's it. You just got to find your way. You're given a sidearm along the way, and the game just kicks off from there. You're in an unknown planet which is teeming with wildlife and lore and God knows whatever else on Earth. But it is absolutely a spectacle to behold right from the get-go.
Yeah.
And then the game just throws enemies at you, waves of enemies at you, varying enemies at you, spawns from hell, uh, xenophobes and sentients and flora and fauna of all grotesque varieties, each shooting their own special hell from a bullet hell perspective. Oh my god, what a game! And it's just shooting them down, getting your adrenaline max to like spike level 5, and going on a run just to die again and restart all over again. It is frustrating, yes, but there's this whole concept, right, when it comes to gaming.
Yeah.
And when you really enjoy a game and when you finally beat a game and you really feel that sense of accomplishment, that hit of dopamine that comes into your that floods
Yeah.
through your veins essentially.
Yep.
Demon Souls did that quite often, and obviously that when I'm saying Demon Souls, I'm talking about the boss runs specifically, and obviously beating the game in one of the first iterations. And the same goes for Returnal. It just hooks you. The game hooks you so well, and it almost taunts you. It's almost like a taunting game. It's like,
It does.
hey, you suck right now, but you could beat the game and you could get better, and you're gonna love it then. And that's essentially what happened. So, summarizing my first impressions, I started the game. I beat boss 1 relatively quickly, I would say. Got to boss 2, very frustrating experience, but finally managed to beat him as well. That's Ixion for you, one of the hardest bosses in the game, in my opinion. And then I got to the third biome in the game, which is the Citadel, as we call it between the two of
Fondly
us.
called.
Fondly call it between the two of us, or the Derelict Citadel, as the game calls it. Uh, Fucking frustrating experience. I quit
Horrible.
eventually. Eventually, it made me quit and go back to Demon Souls and finish that game in the middle. And then I did that, and I came back and said, "Hey, you know what? If I can beat Demon Souls, I can beat Returnal." And and
And I feel the other way around.
and you feel the other way around, which is extremely funny because you're like, "Hey, if I can beat Returnal, I can beat anything
Can beat
else."
anything.
Oh man, that's hilarious. But yeah, that's essentially when I got the nerve to sort of soldier on and decide, hey, you know what? I just got to find the right strategy, and the right strategy I did find eventually. So eventually, I think I tweeted out on 21st July that I'm going to beat the game in a week,
In a week.
and I think 29th July I was like, I beat the game. Fuck this game. I
Yeah,
did
that was
it. I
good.
fucking did it. Yeah. If
Yeah,
only
and-
if only I was so committed in my career. Oh well, such is life.
Such is life.
Yeah.
But yeah, those 7 days when you couldn't shut up about it, that got me
Oh.
back in.
Yep.
I have beaten the game in 7 days as well. Just 3 days later than your 7 days. It has been just relentless boss fight after boss attempt, exploration. Like there's so much to discover. It's such a beautiful game. I think what people miss out on is like it's a dance of bullets. It's so colorful and it's so pretty, and you know it's gonna kill you,
Yep.
like if you get hit. But there is something that is just drawing you in all the time. Visually, like yes, the gameplay is addictive and the story is, cryptic but amazing and it ropes you in. But there is just something about looking at the game or watching someone play,
Yep.
which I think you know better
Oh, I
than
absolutely
anyone.
enjoyed it. And just like you had that
Yeah.
experience with me playing Demon Souls
Demon Souls,
and
yeah.
dying to Man-Eater like 121 times probably, the same experience goes for me.
uh,
Yeah, it was just it's just
it's
fun watching
surreal.
someone explore this world and unravel
Very
it
much.
before your eyes. I think it's a fantastic
Yeah,
experience even for a backseat gamer. It's a very unique experience in that sense. Yep.
yeah, it is. It's gorgeous. And I feel like, again, like when you get to the beginning of the game, right? Like you feel like everything's out to get you. You honestly feel like there are points where I felt like the game was just straight up unfair.
Yep.
And it never let up. Like the tutorial boss is not even a boss. The first encounter you have with a major enemy, it shreks you in one hit.
Yep.
I mean, it leaves you with 2 HP so that you can get hit again and feel
Yep.
insulted.
You're supposed to die
But
at that point, I believe. Yep.
but
Yep.
you are supposed to die at that point. However, if you do somehow manage to get past it, you're given a ton of permanent resources right off the bat. And I didn't know this because I suck at the game. So, and at the first time, I mean, unless you beat the game and you start on a new profile, you're
Yeah.
not going to be able to do it, right? And it is just so rich and dense with just so much detail and so much content that even after the 30 hours that I've played, it just feels like there is a lot more to go.
Yep.
There is so much more to go. And I'm not just talking act 3. I'm talking about like finding more weapons. I'm still lacking one weapon. I don't know, there's like one weapon that I
Oh,
don't
is
have.
it? You still? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's interesting actually.
Yeah, I don't have one weapon, and there are 18 artifacts out of which I have like 4. And it's that thing that's
That nagging
hammering
feeling that, oh,
something into the,
there's
yeah, the
something more.
nagging feeling
There's something
in the
more in
back
this
of my
game.
head that's just going, buddy, you really gonna leave those artifacts? Don't you want to find out what happens next?
Yeah, it's got that.
It's
Yep.
it's got that draw. It's very seductive. I think that's the best word.
Yep. It is. It is. It is.
It's
100% is.
it's a toxic relationship. It hurts you, but you enjoy it.
Oh, it's absolutely masochistic at its core. At its absolute core. All right. Let's get into a couple of interesting tidbits. Let's start with bosses. I think bosses is what.
Is the meat and potatoes
Yep.
of
Of
this
this
game,
game.
apart
Yep.
from like exploration and lore.
Yep. What do you think about the
Okay,
boss fight?
personal boss ranking. Okay, from easiest to hardest.
Let's go. Let's go one
Um,
by one. Let's say, what's your favorite boss? Let's start. Oh, you want to go from
my
easiest to hardest?
Yeah, let's do easiest
Let's
from
do easiest
hardest.
to hardest. Let's go.
Easiest boss for me has to be the last one, Ophion.
Ophion. Yep. I think
Uh,
we're aligned on that one. Yep.
yeah, it's like so
So you
easy.
got it
There's
on the
just
second try, right? Second try
Yeah,
essentially.
I got that on the second try because the
Yep.
first try I walked in with like 1 HP, and I
One.
still got him. I
You
still
got
got
him
him
to
down
like
to one and a
you got
half,
him to like
one and a
50%.
half.
Fifty
Yep.
percent of his overall health essentially.
Entire boss fight. Yeah, and it was very easy. Like there's a trick to it which I think the game explains quite well, and it's a very simply designed boss, but I think it's done intentionally. It has a
Yep.
lot of lore implications there, considering like also I think we're addressing it wrong. That it's more of a she than a he if you think
Yep.
about it
Yep.
from the lore
Yep.
perspective.
Uh,
And I absolutely love how they've sort of balanced the Lovecraftian look of the boss with more traditional horror.
yep.
Very good boss design, but by far easiest boss.
All right.
Easiest boss. You don't even need to think to beat it. Like
It's just a little bit of reflex and some mastery of the jump mechanic, which is slightly different in that biome.
Which is somewhat easier considering the biome,
That's the funny thing, right?
environment.
Because the biome itself fucks with you when you're talking about the jump mechanic in that
Oh,
biome.
absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
you don't know when you're going to land and how you're going to land. You can horribly misjudge your jump in the
Yeah.
biome, which is underwater abyssal scar as it's called.
Abyssal Scar.
Yeah,
Mm.
and it can really mess with you in the biome itself. But because the boss fight is happening in a stadium, obviously in a closed, enclosed arena space, you don't have the risk of falling. Man-eater, I'm looking at you. You don't have the risk of falling off the ledge like 121 times and dying just for the sake of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the. So Kedar, let me ask you something about Ophion, because Ophion is, in my opinion, also the easiest boss. So we're both
Yeah.
aligned on that. Uh,
Mm.
you haven't done the sixth house sequence, or you don't know what happens afterwards, right?
I think I did.
No.
Isn't it the one where you find the child's watch?
So the no no. So the last house sequence is the one that is like it'll give the trophy, by the way, the sins of the mother trophy.
Oh,
Uh,
no, 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 no. Yeah,
and
no, I
that is
haven't got
only
it.
after you do the six house fragments, the six sun fragments. Sorry.
Oh, no, I haven't gotten that
All
yet.
right. So I have actually beaten that part as well,
Okay.
and I won't give you a spoiler over here, but Ophion resembles a character that you see in the sixth house sequence.
Yeah, I'm aware of that because like no, I did go and like once I beat the game, I usually go and look up a video or a guide, and so I know what happens. And there's like the whole mother in a wheelchair sequence, right? Who's in the basement,
Yep.
and yeah, I mean,
So,
judge me all
so
you
in
want, but
no,
I
so
watch
that's the
videos.
funny thing. That's the funny thing,
Yeah.
right? Because I love the parallel that they've drawn, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit away, because the entire game you're like sitting and wondering, because the game teases the basement to you. Whenever you have
Yeah.
those house sequences, you just can't go there because it's just like a dark wall of like
Yep.
the void essentially. You can't enter that void. And in the final house sequence, you can finally descend into the abyss of your own house,
Yep.
and you see that over there.
It's super symbolic.
It is so symbolic, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's fucking smart. That is fucking
Yep.
smart."
Yep.
Yep. But
It
yeah,
is incredibly smart.
talking about Ophion, very easy boss. Uh, I went into Ophion with the Ophion fight with a Tachyomatic high caliber carbine. Grand total time of 3.5 minutes to beat the boss.
That's pretty good.
That is actually broken in my opinion. It's busted,
Yeah,
to be
that's
honest.
that
But
is incredibly good.
But yeah, I was like, I just went into the boss fight, which is a bit of a letdown, honestly, because I went into the boss fight thinking, okay, this is the last boss fight of the game, probably, and
Yeah.
I would want this to game to like throw its most miserable challenge at me. But it turned out to be quite like a
It's a
not
gimmick,
paradox. Yeah, it's not a gimmick. It's a gimmick. Essentially, the boss is a gimmick. I think it's the
pretty
only
much.
boss that has a gimmick, and
Yeah.
because everything else is just like spray to win. I mean, Nemesis, of course,
I mean, Nemesis has kind of a
has a
gimmick.
kind of a gimmick. Yeah, kind of a gimmick, but that's more of like a very straightforward gimmick as opposed to this, which is like a very clear gimmick. Uh,
Yeah.
so I kind of went in expecting a harder challenge, and not
Mm.
getting that challenge was a little bit of a letdown, because at that point I was like, "Abhi itna sab ho gaya hai. I've done so much in this game. I want this game to
Exactly.
like throw its worst challenge at me now," and it did not, unfortunately, or fortunately for me, if you want to finish the game. But
Yeah.
but yeah, but yeah, good bot. Great visuals, no doubt about it. It was just a spectacle to behold.
Absolutely stunning.
Spectacle to behold. The sound effects, especially in the Abyssal Scar, the sound effects with you jumping and the sounds echoing, and you know that
Yeah.
whole, it's a very minute detail, but it just adds up, and it just packs a little bit of oomph into the entire sequence that is to follow. Yeah,
Yep. It's very subtle with the
very
underwater
subtle,
sound effects.
very subtle. So
That's very
that's
good.
Ophion. All right, let's go to boss number 4 on the list in terms of ranking.
Who was your fourth boss?
Hmm.
Fourth
So
fourth
we're rating
easiest.
this on the basis of easiness, right?
Yep.
Basing it on the basis of ease. I think
Yep.
in terms of ease, I would say Firke or Frike or Freak, whatever you want to call her, or it,
Okay. Yeah.
is the fourth easiest for me. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, interestingly, because
Interestingly, yeah.
I just sort of recalled and I jogged my memory again, and I think I took 5 attempts for Freak. and
Okay.
I took 3 for Hyperion.
Okay.
No, sorry, I took 3 for Freak and 5 for Hyperion. I'm mixing it up. Ulta kiya maine.
Okay.
So
All
Freak
right.
and Freak was relatively straightforward in my opinion in terms of a boss fight, because it
Hmm.
was more or less just, and I think I was blessed with like a very good alt fire when I was fighting Freak for the last
Yeah.
time, which in my case was the Void Beam. So Void Beam
Oh,
absolutely shreds Freak.
absolutely shreds.
So yeah, I think Freak was relatively easy, and I thought, okay, if this is the tonality of the boss fights, then it should be a breeze to go through. But I was wrong, and how?
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because for me, number four is probably Hyperion.
Yep.
Uh, have to say this. Have to say this. Possibly the best music for any boss fight in this game. It's it is
It is.
it is so haunting, so gentle, and yet so discouraging at the same time. It completely throws you off. The boss looks literally like Davy Jones. If you've watched Pirates of the Caribbean,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
pretty much behaves like Davy Jones too, but is a complete pushover in my opinion. I beat him in one try, so didn't really. So the only reason I'm putting it after Ophion is because Ophion for the final boss was kind of underwhelming.
Yep.
Like you expect the game to throw everything at you, and it doesn't.
Yep.
But I'm taking away a few points there. But Hyperion, just because of spectacle, is absolutely incredible.
I agree with you. I think of the entire game, Hyperion is probably, yeah, it's probably my favorite boss in terms of the overall spectacle, as we
Oh
call it.
yeah,
I
absolutely,
think
yeah.
it's the best boss in the entire game as far as the spectacle in the show is concerned, because everything just hits the right notes. No pun intended. Uh, it's just surreal, that whole experience of climbing the spire,
Fire,
ascending it, and hearing the music just like overwhelm you, and you're
swell
like,
up.
what the fuck is that sound? And then you're given a sidearm and you're like, so there's a boss above us, is it? All right,
Yeah,
interesting. And you go there and you find this grotesque being playing like a alien organ of sorts,
organ. Yeah.
and it's just like spewing bullets at you from the organ itself. And I observed this, by the way. I did not notice this when I was actually in the boss fight, because you're so overwhelmed in the boss fight sometimes that you don't realize these minute details. But I actually looked at a couple of videos of people playing versus Hyperion,
Yeah.
and I noticed that as the bullets move past you, the sound intensifies of the music. I did not realize that in
Oh,
the fight
I
itself.
didn't realize that either.
But
That's interesting.
they're actually notes. Can you believe it? Those
Yeah.
bullets are actually notes, and I'm like, holy fucking hell. That is a mind
Makes a
blowing
lot
level of detail.
more sense now.
That's a mind blowing level of detail.
Absolutely.
And I was like, wow, dude, wow, that's just like, oh my god. So yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah,
It's
I think Hyperion, I in fact, incidentally, Hyperion is the third on the list for me. So we've just like swapped places for
uh
one with one boss. I believe,
swap places
I think we've just swapped
pretty
places
much.
over here, because I think for you, Freak is like,
Frike is number three.
Frike is number three. Yep.
Frike, Freak, whatever. Number three. Took me 5 tries.
Hmm.
Easily because I went in with the sidearm. I beat it with the sidearm. I
Hmm.
didn't have. I had horizontal barrage, or whatever it is, horizontal
Probably one of the
thingy.
worst alt fires in the game.
It is the worst alt fire in the game. I don't think there's anything as bad as that.
Yep.
Even like vertical barrage would have been fine because Frike's
Yeah,
like a
because Frike is
tall
like a
thing.
tall,
It could
slender
have just
being.
hit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no missing with the
Funnily
vertical
enough,
barrage.
went back
So I think, Kedar, you're lagging a little bit. Hold on.
in this morning with yes, I am. Hold on.
Hold
Okay,
on.
is this better? We'll have to edit that out.
Yo, now you're back.
Back. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. वो काटना पड़ेगा.
हाँ
Where
हाँ
was
चलेगा.
I?
Let's continue. Yep.
So Frike went
Frike,
back in this
slender.
morning. Yep. Went back in this morning with the electropylon driver. Didn't get hit
Oh
once.
no, dude. That gun is just.
Did not get hit once. I didn't use the alt fire because it was a mine
You
launcher or
don't need the
whatever,
alt
but
fire
I
with
don't need the alt fire
electropile.
with the electropylon driver. I think we saw that pretty evident
Yep.
in when I was playing Biome 6 and I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
just shredding the mini boss, which is like, yeah. I guess that's
That's the
that.
gun. That's just how the gun works.
That's brilliant. We'll get to weapons later.
We'll get to weapons. Oh, definitely. I have a
We'll get to
long
weapons,
discussion.
biomes. There's a
Yeah,
whole
there's a
lot to
whole
do.
lot to talk about on that front. Yeah. All right.
What about number two?
Number two,
Who's
I think, is
second hardest?
Nemesis is the second hardest for me.
Pretty much agree with
Nemesis
you
is
there.
the second hardest because Nemesis, what it does is, while the other bosses are in a very conventional arena, Nemesis is the only one that sort of throws in the whole maneuverability aspect into the game.
Yep.
And it's a lot to process while you're fighting the boss, because you have the boss itself throwing some orbs at you. Its children are shooting lasers at you, and
Yeah,
phase
it's
one
got
goes by pretty quick, pretty normal, uh, and then it just flips the script on your head, and it says, "Hey, you know what? I'm the boss now," and the game just shows you who the boss is, and it
yeah.
just throws you on these like moving platforms, and you have to like keep grappling between platforms to stay afloat, literally.
Yeah.
And I think that threw me off a couple of times, because for me it was like, okay, I need to shoot at that red dot on the boss. I need to dodge the
Yeah.
orbs. I need to grapple between point A to point B so as to dodge the orbs. And then phase
Yeah.
3, and I'm like, wait, I don't. What the fuck? You're like thrown like 10 kilometers away from Nemesis.
Yeah.
And
Why am
you're.
I in another nation?
Why am I in the next biome? What's happening? Is it a bug? Am I glitching out? And then it just like it suspends you in limbo, and you're like, oh, okay, I need to now grapple and navigate closer to the boss so I can shoot him better. Now, unless you have a
Yeah.
long range gun which has got like no dip or whatever, that's going to be a task. And I went in with the rod gland lobber, which was surprisingly the gun with which I beat the boss with ultimately, which I think was your case
Yeah.
as well. But
Same.
none of the other guns worked for me. And then finally, I was like, you know what, damage over time it is. Let's go. Yeah. But yeah, Nemesis,
Yeah.
I think in terms of creative execution for a boss itself, simply in terms of the arena itself of the boss, I think
Yeah.
Nemesis takes the cake for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think on par with Hyperion for best boss.
Yep.
It really peaks at Biome 3 and Biome 4. I feel like that's
Yep.
where their quality just hit the perfect balance.
Yeah. It's
And
just good enough to grip you and
yeah,
egg you on towards like the end game that is to follow.
exactly. Like you said yesterday, right? Like when we were talking, you said this one thing, which is like if you beat Biome 3, you're not going to stop playing. And I have to agree with that statement. I
Yep.
have to agree with that statement because I beat Biome 3. I mean, I got to Biome 3 and I couldn't stop playing. I was like, if I can beat Ixion,
Yep.
I can beat I am God. Just I am Ixion now.
I'm Ixion now.
It's that I am the Ixion now.
Oh man.
It feels that good. It feels that invigorating. It feels that encouraging. And then you reach Nemesis, who is also number two on my list, like second hardest, you could say. And I coincidentally fell in love with the Rot Gland Lobber at the same time. It is the best weapon in the game after probably the Electropylon driver.
Uh-huh.
And it just so narrowly kicks out the Hollow Seeker for me. But oh my god, the Rot Gland Lobber just saved my skin. Uh, and props to the astronaut, with no pun
Oh,
intended.
astronaut in
Saved
the
my
ocean.
ass.
Astronaut in the ocean. There's a song on that, right? That's like recently becoming a sensation on.
Meme for
Yeah,
on Reddit.
it's so
Yeah,
perfect for this game. It's so funny. Anyway,
it just works.
it just
Yeah,
works.
so Nemesis got them in what was, I think this boss took me the most tries,
Mm-hmm.
but I just feel like you need the right equipment.
Yep.
And this is where I would draw the line. I feel like Nemesis is the only boss that forces you to think, forces you to prepare. The other bosses, there is a good chance, like with Hyperion and Ophion, you can just walk in with probably any gun besides the shotgun
Or the
and
pistol,
win.
or probably the pistol.
Yeah, here is the
Maybe
thing though,
even the
right? Like,
pistol might work with Ophion. I don't know about Hyperion
no,
though.
no, that's the thing, right? Like, I have gotten to Ixion, the last phase of Ixion with a pistol. I've beaten Frike with the pistol. And I'm pretty sure it would have been easy for Ophion. Hyperion, yes, you might be right there. It might be really hard. But Nemesis is the only exception. There are a very limited number of guns you get before that that can help. And I feel like if the lobber was something you got after biome 3, a lot of players would drop the game. I need, like, this is one thing I need to look up. Like, I need to know what the statistics are, who beat how many bosses with
Oh
what
yeah,
weapon,
this
because
this warrants like a database almost, you know.
this really needs a database. And I'll tell you why. Most videos I watched, like last night after I finished the game, I was on a video watching spree.
Spree, yeah.
And I have seen boss walkthroughs, okay, after beating it. I kid you not, everyone on YouTube has either used a lobber or has used the thermogenic launcher.
Oh yes.
Yep, thermogenic launcher is surprisingly more than the lobber has been used against Nemesis. And that's what I'm saying, right? This is the only boss that demands that you look for a better weapon.
Yep.
Because every other boss you can just beat with an automatic weapon.
Yep. 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Which I think brings us to our ultimate
So
pain in the
let me
ass.
give my 2 cents on.
Oh, yeah,
Nemesis as
please
well,
go ahead.
Because
Yeah.
I feel that. I think I know the reason why Nemesis is very hard with an auto weapon, because you have to focus so much more in that particular boss fight on your maneuverability
Yeah.
that you really don't have time to just like hold down the trigger and be like, you know what, I'm just spraying. You know, you can't just like be like, and then I start blasting essentially. You can't
Yeah.
do that. You need to like really think. You need to pause, look for the right opportunity, and then shoot. And I think I think in the entire game, I think that's the only boss where that demands, the only instance where it demands that of you, I think, as far as I'm aware. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to think to pause to shoot. You can just afford to spray bullets everywhere when it comes to other bosses. But
I
you
agree.
really have to think with Nemesis. You really have to think with Nemesis. Do I dodge now or do I shoot now? Do I like grapple now? Do I shoot now? Do I alt fire now or do I shoot regular bullets now? And I think that's the
Yeah.
only, I think that's why this boss is like particularly challenging for me.
Yeah.
And yep,
I
like
agree.
incidentally, I did try both. I did try the thermogenic launcher. I tried, I think I took 5 to 6 tries for Nemesis. I've tried almost all the weapons. And when I say all the weapons, I'm trying some of the best weapons in the game.
Yeah.
I tried Hollow Seeker, miserable experience with the Hollow Seeker, surprisingly. I tried the Tachyomatic Carbine with the high rising pitch. The rising pitch didn't work for me. The high caliber got me close.
Right.
Thermogenic launcher again was good, but not good enough. And then I was like, you know what? Let's just try the Rotland Lobber, lob those fucking rot grenades at Nemesis's heart or whatever it is, and just watch the damage just chip away at the boss itself. And that's ultimately what I did. You know, I think that's the only boss where I was. And for me, it's a little bit of a visual thing, right? Where I think I'm naturally tuned to look at the health for like that visual feedback, like the boss health.
Yeah.
It helps me a lot to know that, you know, it sort of plays like a mind game for me, where I'm like, oh, I'm this close, and I just get a little more confident in that boss fight if I'm close.
Yeah.
With that particular boss fight, for me, the feedback was very important, because I was like, okay, so I'm doing a lob damage, and it's like chipping away at the health gradually, second by second, and I'm like, oh, that's good. I just need to get like a couple of lobs in, keep lobbing, and I'm good. Yeah, loved it. Loved Nemesis.
Pretty much the
That's
same
the
logic.
only instance that I used the rod gun lobber. Let me add, only instance in the entire game. I did not use that gun anywhere else in the entire game. That one run, where I was like, you know what, I have the rod gun lobber. Let me try this gun out. I got it in Crimson Wastes. This is when I had already beaten Ixion, obviously, so I skipped the second boss battle. Went straight to Derelict Citadel. Blasted through. This time I ignored the biome itself and just like ran to Nemesis.
At biome.
Yep, I just ran to Nemesis, because that biome is impossible with the Globber. I think. I don't think you can go room to room with the Globber itself. I think those drones will just fuck you over completely.
It is going to be a pain.
Yeah, and then I just went.
Because I tried.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And then I got Nemesis, and I'm like, okay, cool, let's try. Let's just go for it, and it worked surprisingly. Yeah, Nemesis. That's the only fight, and that's the only instance in the game where I was like, okay, Globber, let's go for it.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up the Globber anywhere else in the game, not one.
I kind of fell in love with that weapon.
You fell in love with the gun, which I found very interesting, by the way. But for me, I was like, that's the only situation where I like felt that the Globber is the gun to go to.
Needed, yeah. So I beat I ended up beating Hyperion also with the
With the
Lobber.
lobber.
So
Yep, yep.
I in fact I switched out a Hollow Seeker for a Lobber and I beat him.
Yeah, when I met you in Fractured Waste and I was sort of watching you play through and you're like, oh, the lobber is good, it's great. And I'm like, it's good. It's good versus Nemesis, but is it good beyond that? And I'm like, oh,
It ain't great.
this guy's actually like playing the game with the lobber. I'm fucking impressed. It's great.
Yeah, because you saw it. It was
I saw,
fine until
yeah,
that room came up and I
the
got
traits
hit
that
by
it.
the purple
Oh, yeah,
thing.
that particular room was it was funny for me to watch, but at your expense. But but yeah, oh man, yeah. All right, which brings us to
And the ultimate.
the ultimate challenge, which was Ixion.
Oh god. Which is just like nightmare fuel to a certain
Oh
point.
man, that boss
Um
battle.
Possibly again one of the most gorgeous boss battles out there. It makes you practice.
Yep.
It makes you practice.
Yep.
And I went in, so fun story. I didn't know how long dashes worked in the game. Uh, I didn't know you could dodge through the red area of effect attacks. I didn't know a lot of things because I skipped over the tutorial, right? And so I have beaten this boss with such a major handicap.
Handicap.
It
Yep.
was not even funny. And I went in with a tachyomatic carbine with rising pitch,
Yep.
and I somehow just did it. Void Beam was my alt fire and rising pitch,
Oh, I think it's
and
a great
I
combo. Yep.
played. Because here is the thing, right? Like his patterns are very predictable. It is just getting to a point where you can predict them that is hard. And I sound like a broken record, but this boss is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
watching the fight is so much fun
It,
because it's the prettiest bullet hell, I would say.
Yeah, incidentally, it's I think the game has this whole theme, where for Frike you descend, for Ixion you
Yeah,
ascend, for
yeah,
Nemesis you ascend, for
pretty much.
for Hyperion you ascend, and then for Ophion again you descend.
Yep.
And it's a very funny thematic bit to the entire game.
Direction.
And
Mm.
I remember when I was like ascending, there's this instance where you take the translocator to Ixion itself, and it's sort of like it's like portal balling you over the stadium, over the arena,
Yep.
and you're like, oh, good lord, there's a fucking arena over there. It's like a
Yeah.
gladiator pit that's waiting to like, end your misery, and you're like, oh yeah, that's going to be a boss battle, and you like the entire spectacle of like over, like you reach that perch where you're like, oh,
Yeah.
this is the arena, and then Ixion is like just there in that ball,
He's there.
and
Yep.
I'm like,
Yep.
oh my god, what the fuck is that thing? And you descend, and then it just like flies around like a fucking eagle and shoots hell at you.
Yeah.
Oh man, what a
Here's something
boss!
I noticed. You said fly, and here's something I noticed in like I think the boss took me about 8 or 9 tries to beat, and by the time I got to the last, like the time I beat it, right, I noticed it loses its wings in every phase.
Yep, that's essentially why it's
It's
grounded in the last phase.
grounded in the last phase. It is such a cool little detail, and it's I don't know. This boss is the hardest for so many reasons because yes, you can take any weapon and beat it. Yes, there is a cheese also. If you just stand under it, piece of cake.
Yep,
But it is so unpredictable. It takes a lot of practice to memorize its patterns. Just a
yep,
whole lot of
yep,
practice.
yep.
Also, the sound design and its movement speeds will really throw off any new player. Like
Oh,
new player
absolutely.
to any boss fight, like any difficulty level, everyone's going to be thrown off. This is not something someone will get in one try at all. I don't think that's real.
Yeah, I think that's going to be like a world record of some sort if you're able to beat Ixion in the first try.
Yeah,
That
it's
sounds crazy difficult, honestly. So
it's
when I
also like
yep,
the build up, right? Like you go from nothing, you start in like this wasteland, and then you reach the mountain, and then you fight through the mountain, and then you get up, and then like you said, it basically catapults you across the map, and it builds this tension, and it's just there like in its nest, bound to like something, and it's
yeah,
almost like it's
pylons.
waiting for you. It's
Yeah.
I don't know, it's very spectacular.
It's
It's
very
like an
ominous. It's very
event.
spectacular. It's almost a gladiator arena pit battle. It's like
It is. It's
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 been
like an
waiting.
event.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's like, I think that's more of a common theme among all the bosses here. They all feel like events. They're not just, oh look, here's a thing in a room, kill it and move on.
Yep.
It's it's
There is a higher
very much like an
significance. There's
event.
a higher significance
Oh yeah,
to all of the boss battles. Like each of them represents something that obviously we can probably touch upon at a later stage, but it's all got a
yeah,
very, very deep significance to the story itself,
which is amazing.
which is amazing in itself. Yeah,
So deep.
Ixion, very frustrating boss for me too. Uh, I am actually glad that there was a shortcut to Ixion at one point,
Oh,
because
thank
the
God, right?
harder part of the biome is that sequence where you're like ascending the mountain, not
Yep.
getting to the foot of the mountain, but ascending the mountain itself is the harder challenge in the biome. I'm just glad there's a shortcut, because otherwise this biome would have probably been the hardest biome.
Hardest biome.
I would probably say that.
Easily.
Uh,
Yep.
but just the fact that you just have to cross the wasteland and then get to the portal makes the job
Yep.
easy. Talking about Ixion itself, spectacular is what I would say. Uh,
Absolute.
a lot of things caught me off guard as a PC gamer, I would say, with this particular boss battle, because and this is when I sort of realized that, okay, it's not like it's not a handicap, but when I was using the controller and I was like, where the fuck is this guy gonna swoop at me from? I have no idea. And I'm like, okay, rotate, 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 rotate. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Looking up, looking up, looking around. And you're like, then he suddenly swoops at you and you're like, oh fuck, dash, 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 dash. And
Yep.
that really, like, because with the freedom that that a keyboard mouse gives you is quick movement with your mouse itself, and you can move the camera around very quickly. It's very fast paced.
Yeah.
And someone like me who's been playing Dota for like years and years, it's very natural, it's very instinctive for me. But here you're
Yeah.
thrown into an arena where you can just like gradually pan your camera. I mean, that's, I would say, gradual, because relative to the mouse, it's very gradual.
Oh, it's much slower.
Yeah. And then you're like, where is this guy swooping from? Where is he coming from? That's phase two. Because phase one I felt is like pretty straightforward.
It's
But
pretty easy. Yeah.
but phase two, he swoops at you and he shoots those like walls and bullets at you from like sides of the arena. And then the most difficult part was phase three, when he's actually grounded, which is surprising because he's supposed to be like a flying demigod essentially. And when
Yeah.
he's grounded, he's at his worst. Like, it's almost like, you're like a wounded boss is wounded beast is like a hardest to kill. Essentially, that's the kind of
Yeah.
logic that I would apply over here. And there's this
I think that
sequence.
perfectly sums it up.
There's this sequence in phase three where he's like, he has a gun, and he shoots the gun. He dashes, and he shoots again from another
Yeah.
angle. And I'm like, I did not
Yeah.
expect that, because I was expecting, okay, he's going to jump melee, ground pound, jump, melee, ground pound. And that's the gimmick. And then suddenly he
Yeah.
pulls out a gun and he like dashes to another side. And I'm like, wait, where'd he go? And I'm like, oh, he's there. And before I could even react, he's like, he shot me like once again. And I was
Yeah.
like, holy fuck, this boss is like crazy, man. What is this guy? And
It darts around like crazy.
it darts around very fast. It like shoots one or two like bullets and it like darts again. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
before I can even react, it's like darts again. And I'm like, okay, calm down, like slow down. Let me catch my breath. As it is, I'm like on low HP at this point, and I'm like, all right, chill a little bit. Like, let me like gather my senses and figure out how do I even beat this thing. With
Yeah.
Ixion, I tried. I think by that point you unlock 4 weapons or 5 weapons at most.
Yeah.
And none of them worked for me. And the only instance that worked for me was Tachymatic with high caliber. Because even though auto weapons I think will work with Ixion, for some reason I was just not able to get the balance of dodging plus automatic bullet hell. And for me it was
Okay.
like those precise shots. I'm like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, dodge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, dodge. That just
Ah.
worked better for me with Ixion, and I was pleasantly surprised, because I always thought that, considering my experience with Frike, just
Yeah.
spray and dash, spray and dash. But this was a very
Mm.
different experience per se.
Yeah.
So
Boss really, again, right? Like I said, practice. This one is just
it's
practice.
just practice, memorizing patterns, and then you beat the game.
Yep.
Yep, that's
That
that's the boss
that was
rankings.
our list
That
of
was
bosses.
yeah. And overall, I just want to say that I just want to add that the bosses themselves each feels unique. The soundtrack for each boss, the build up to each boss, the boss themselves, the boss design, I would say, is some of the best I've seen.
Yep.
They're all equally grotesque, but at the same time, they're all memorably etched into your memory, I would say.
Yeah.
Uh, just a
Incredibly
fantastic,
detailed.
incredibly detailed. Even though they're all like
Very symbolic.
very symbolic, they have a lot of deep significance to them, and
Yeah.
it's just a spectacle. It's just a spectacle to behold, honestly, and absolutely satisfying to beat because you just know that beating a boss is going to reward you with something like extremely gratifying.
Yeah.
So
Mostly progression. So
mostly progression.
you kind of need that.
You need that. You want that shiny trophy, obviously the bronze trophy,
Yep.
and for each boss, and obviously it gives you like a piece of equipment. I think almost each boss gives you an equipment piece that is significant to progress in the game.
Yes. Some permanent equipment
Some
unlocks.
permanent equipment
One quarter.
unlocks, equipment or
Yeah.
slash artifact, whatever it might be. All right,
Mm.
so that's bosses. What do you want to go to next, Kedar?
I would like to talk about some of the biomes. And I think we can put in weapons with biomes because you find
With
them in
yep,
very
you find them in
specific places.
you find them in sequences. Yep.
Yeah. Let's get the worst one out of the way because no one, I'm pretty sure. See, this is again why I need a fucking database because I want to know how many people beat the game with a Spitmaw. I wage on 0. I don't think anyone beat the game with a Spitmaw, though I do feel it is kind of possible. Like just going to boss 6
Yeah,
and wailing on it with a Spitmaw seems fair. But I think that's the one of the worst weapons you get in the
I think
first
it's the
biome,
second gun that they
which
introduced to you after the carbine. I think so
yeah,
they introduced
after the carbine.
the sequences pistol, carbine, spitmaw, hollow seeker,
Yeah,
launcher,
thermogenic launcher. Yeah, lobber.
lobber. Yeah, lobber comes in between
Uh,
thermogenic and hollow seeker. I think. Yeah, I think so.
I,
Spitmaw.
I I guess the
Yeah,
order is pretty
somewhere
different
around
for
that
everyone,
order
right?
essentially. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
But Spitmaw is, I think, the third
So
weapon in the game that they introduced you.
yeah, it is. It is the third weapon in the game. Also, pretty much like unusable in my opinion. I don't
Yep.
think I have ever been happy
Very high risk,
getting
but
one of
very
those.
high risk for very little reward, I would say, with that gun.
Yeah, I feel like considering, okay, so if we were to speak about situational stuff in Biome 1, right? Like Biome 1 does have tight spaces. It
Hmm.
does make you move closer to enemies in some situations because it's just a dark forest with a whole lot of rain.
Yep.
It is it's just the most it's a tropical forest in the daytime.
Hmm.
That is in the nighttime, which is it, right? But it's in the middle of these ruins, like this abandoned sort of, I would say, fortress.
Hmm. Hmm.
It does have the makings of a fort,
Yep.
and pathways that connect different parts of like a castle or whatever.
So
But then again, that's just my
essentially, the
interpretation.
overgrown ruins are like the outskirts of the derelict citadel, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, they sort of connect into the massive
Citadel
citadel, right?
itself.
And
Yep.
so, and it is just teeming with this horrific wildlife, which is always trying. So that's another thing, right? Like if you notice in the overgrown ruins, the enemies are so melee focused. Like, yes, they will all shoot bullets because it's a bullet hell game, but most of the enemies, from the tiny dogs, the blue ones,
They
I
all want to try and
don't
bite
really know
you.
their names.
They want to jump at you if it's the gorilla.
But
Yep.
yeah, if it's the gorilla thing, it's going to jump at you. If it's the doggo, it's going to jump at you at some point if you get any
Too
close.
close. Yep.
The stingrays have only one attack. They do not at all have bullets. They just lunge at you when they glow orange.
Yep.
And there's the squids who, like the small squids who kind
They'll
of
either spew bullets
have,
or they'll like shoot lasers at you, essentially.
yeah, and the beam attack is pretty much the worst thing to get hit by because
Yeah,
it's
it's
relentless
pretty it's pretty irritating to be hit by a
and
beam attack.
it's very damage stacky. But that's the thing, right? Like the Spitmaw may work in that biome because they are all very tight spaces. If you take the Spitmaw to something like biome 2 where it's this open wasteland, it's
I have tried Spitmaw and Crimson Wastes.
yeah,
Miserable experience. It takes like 15 to 20 hits
it
to like knock those mini cuboid
exactly,
enemies off the air. It's like so difficult
yeah,
because the spread is it's so big. The spread is so large that you're like hitting them with like one shell probably of the shotgun. And I'm like,
yeah.
nah, doesn't work.
It is, and here's why. If you notice, every biome after biome 1, even if it does have tight spaces, which is just basically biome 4, okay? Biome 5 doesn't have as many tight spaces as biome 1,
Hmm. Hmm.
but Biome 4 comes closest because it's the same thing but daytime
Different
and
timeline.
a
Yep.
little bit in the future, right? Quite a bit into the future. But here's the thing: every enemy there is a long ranged enemy.
Yep.
There is barely there'll be one mini boss who's the gorilla who is like melee. But then again, because you're so accustomed to everything before that and after that being long ranged, you do not want something at close range.
Yep.
Like the Spitmaw is only useful in Biome 1, and maybe that's why they give it to you there. They expect you to evolve from using the Spitmaw. I'm
Yep.
pretty much on board with that idea. I don't think they wanted you to get through the game with the Spitmaw.
Yep. Unless you're
But
like
it is,
some manic challenge run kind of person who wants to
yeah,
lose his
there's definitely
marbles.
There's someone who's done it.
Yep.
I'm
100%
waging
sure.
my
Yeah.
bets on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is just that, right? Like Biome 1 has the most melee enemies, but if you climb through the biomes, right? If you go to Biome 2, they're all ranged.
Yep.
If you go to Biome 3, it's a hellscape. Everything is ranged. Even the ones who come close range are ranged.
Yep.
It's so messy. And I feel like Biome 1 has one of the best weapons, which is the Tachyomatic Carbine,
Yeah. Straight
which
up
is,
introduces you to the. So it's very the basic principles of a shooter game, right? It'll give you a semi-automatic, it'll give you an automatic, it'll give you a shotgun, and it's like a grenade launcher, and it'll give you like these four categories of weapon and be like, hey, you know what? These are your four primary categories. Find what you
go
think is going
crazy.
to work best for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how they play around with that idea as well.
Yep.
Like, it's just how weapons have different statistics. Are like, yes, they're familiar to you, but here's what it does differently. You know, it's that like, yeah, you've played Doom Eternal, you know what a shotgun does,
Yep.
but what if, you know what a grenade launcher does, but what if a grenade launcher did this? What if a grenade launcher had one grenade in it,
Yeah. Yeah.
only
Yeah.
one grenade, which sort of comes back together because of a salivary gland in it
and
that is
and
basically
that
acid.
and that is what I love about the weapons in Returnal, because I think I think there have been very few instances in the game itself that I've felt that I've got the exact same weapon before. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
when I say exact same, it has to be like the same weapon, plus the same passive traits, plus the same alt fire.
yeah.
That's probably never happened
Very
in the
rare.
game. That's probably never happened to me in the game, because I think there are so many permutations and combinations you can get with like the weapons in the game that you will always find something new with every weapon you try. Almost, I would
Mm.
say almost. I think 95% of times that's going to be the case where you're going to be like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, the last time I got this gun, I had this instead of this, and that is probably better, or this is interestingly better, or whatever. I remember your reaction with the Hollow Seeker and the portal retargeting beam, which was
It
like
was so good.
it was so satisfying to even watch. Yeah.
Yeah, but then again, right? Like the game makes you weigh the odds every step of the way. Like there was that one instance when I was playing, and you might remember this, where I was just like, "Damn, that gun has this one trait that I really want, but what I have right now does more damage."
Yeah. Yeah. I
And so
remember.
I just quickly switched out to the Holoseeker, shot it for like a couple of seconds, and then switched back to the Electropylon driver. And it's just that, like, it's just that feeling of wanting to shoot a gun, but you know it's not gonna help you. You know you
Yeah.
need to survive.
Yeah.
It's making ends meet in the most interesting way possible.
Absolutely. Another instance, I know we've sort of moved away from biomes to guns suddenly, but I think that's fine. Uh, on the guns bit, I just love how the dual sense feels with every gun. Oh man, it is so
Oh,
satisfying.
absolutely.
It is so satisfying. It is
So
so
good.
satisfying to watch how the dual sense adapts to every single bullet. The triggers with every single bullet, absolutely phenomenal experience.
Yep.
It just never gets old. It's almost like that. You know how they say that touch is one of the most important senses, and I don't think that there is a better experience when it comes to uh, video games and the sense of touch,
Yep.
because I mean, at least not yet, because we might get more in the future, but so far with my experience on the dual sense, this has probably been the game that gives me that experience the most.
It's a very underrated feature, and I know we're sort of like for a second, I think we're going to deviate here. It Video games has everything. I guess apart from the sense of smell and taste, right?
Yep, yep.
It engages all your
All your
senses. And I
senses.
think what the dual sense does right is sound, light, and now touch. Like
Touch.
it
Yep.
gets everything right, because when you know when your weapon's out of ammo and you, or like out of the
Chonk.
alt fire,
There's that
and
chonk
you
that comes.
try
Yep.
to, yeah, and if you're out of the alt fire, you're just like, and it's just that,
It's
it's the
that
clicking, which is like,
sensation.
holy shit, my guns run out.
It's that sensory feedback you get that is so invaluable, because the game is going to overwhelm you with visuals everywhere, and a lot of times you're going to
Yep.
miss visual cues. There are going to be instances that you're going to miss the
Yeah.
visual cues completely. But
Mm.
when your alt fire is back, you hear that cring, that sound that plays in the
Yeah,
background, and
there's
you're
like
like,
that
okay,
chime.
my alt fire is ready. When the overload hits successfully, there's a different feeling. When the overload
Yep.
fails, there's a different feeling. So you know exactly what you need to do in that instance, and it's an
It,
interesting sense. And I think the game needs it, because
oh yeah, absolutely.
if the game is not able to communicate with you beyond visuals, because the visuals can get overbearing at point of time. If it's not able to do something beyond the visual aspect, the visual feedback, then you might feel like, oh man, if this was like, imagine if you didn't have the sensory touch, like the whole
Yeah.
experience with the adaptive triggers, you'd probably be left wondering, okay, why isn't like there a very clear reload text that's blaring on my screen that tells me that I'm out of ammo or something of that sort. But it doesn't need
Yeah.
to, and that's a very good harmony of elements in the game itself when it comes to mechanics. I think they've got that element, that synchronization, very nicely tuned,
Yep.
and I just
Yeah.
love that aspect of it. Yeah.
It's incredible, right? Like I have no idea how many people were writing it off as like, oh, it's just a new toy, it's just like a piece of technology. And now
Oh no.
after Returnal, you should watch like anyone's reviews, right? Like
Yep.
everyone's like, oh yeah, the dual sense, that's one of the reasons you need to play the game. It's essential. Like
Even
there is no
even
alternative to it.
things like the raindrops and
Oh
uh,
yeah.
uh,
Like Ixion swooshing past you.
swooshing past you. Oh, that experience was like it's like it's so unnerving, honestly. Where you're just like, you can feel the vibrations. You're just like gripping the control, and then suddenly it just like vibrate. The vibration intensifies as he like swoops past you, and you're like, holy
Swoops
fuck, that's
past you.
crazy.
Yeah. Also the direction you're facing, it's like if you're facing right and
It's
he's on the left, the
it's
left side's
very
gonna vibrate.
vibrate more. It's
It
very intuitive almost, and I'm
it
just
is
glad that
like,
we're in a space where we're blessed enough to be able to enjoy this experience
oh,
with a video game.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just it's such a privilege to just hold a dual sense and be like, this is literally an earth-shattering experience. And then you
Yep.
fall down a hole and you feel the earth shatter beneath your legs,
Yeah.
and you're like, huh, that's that's literal. It's there and it hurt.
It's pretty funny. Yep.
Uh,
All right. So I don't want to do like a whole weapon tier list, but let's do top
oh,
five
we
at
just
least.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Let's just do top five.
Cool. Real quick, real quick. Electropylon driver, rod gland
We're
lobber.
aligned on that one. Okay.
Yeah, rod gland lobber, hollow seeker, tachymatic carbine, and then probably the thermogenic launcher.
Mm-hmm. All right. Interesting. So I'm going to go with the Electropylon driver, obviously being the most
Yeah,
OP weapon. I'm going to go ahead and say it's an OP weapon. I
it
think
is
I
insanely OP.
think it needs a
It's
nerf.
broken.
I think it needs a nerf, to be honest, for like people who want to play the game later on. But anyway, that's besides the point. I think the game is like made for people who are bad at the game. I think we're just bad at the game. Maybe you never know. But anyway, Electropylon driver, I think it's just the most fantastic game in the gun in the game.
Mm,
Uh, I'm gonna put high caliber tachymatic carbine on number 2 in my
mm.
list. I will put hollow seeker on number 3.
Okay.
I will put pyroshell caster on number 4,
Oh, all right.
and I will put hold on. What am I missing? There is some gun that I'm missing that is very good.
There's like a spine thing. I don't know. I've not found that yet.
Coil spine shredder, but
Yeah.
that's not my cup of tea. I tried that gun. I'm gonna put the thermogenic launcher at number 5.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's
So
a good list.
I think you haven't played the pyroshell caster yet.
I haven't at all. I
Yeah.
don't think I've played. There's 3 weapons I haven't properly played. I haven't played the pyroshell caster.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't played with the spine
coil
thing.
spine
I
shredder.
haven't even found it. That's
Encountered
how
it, yeah.
absurd it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like that's the only weapon that's remaining. And I haven't properly used the Dreadbound, though I have tried it.
Yeah. So the
Like it
Dreadbound
is
is
an
one of those guns.
insanely interesting
Yeah, the
weapon.
Dreadbound is probably the most unique gun in the game, I would say, because it doesn't follow the
Okay.
conventional principles of the game of overload, and it doesn't have an overload essentially.
Yeah.
It's just projectiles. You just wait for the projectiles to come back.
It's a boomerang.
It's a boomerang. It's technically a crossbow. That's how the game looks at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
like a
pretty
it's
much.
a rapid firing crossbow essentially, and it's like the crossbow bolts go and they come back to you, and there is no
Mm,
overload. You cannot do any reload in this on this particular gun. It's a
yeah.
very unique experience in the game itself, because when you first pick up a Dreadbound and you're like, wait, where's the overload in this gun? And you're like, it doesn't even
Yeah.
have an overload. You just have to wait for the projectiles to come back. It does crazy damage, mind you. It does insanely high damage.
Yeah, it does do very good
But
damage.
but the risk reward is that you need to like really be very good with your aim, and you need to mind the
Yeah.
distance, because if even if the creatures that you're hitting at the very far distance, you have to wait for the projectile to go hit them and then come back for it to reload your gun.
Yeah.
And that's
It's probably the hardest
it's the
weapon to
hardest gun in the
master.
game to master. 100% agree on that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Don't really think I'm gonna use it ever.
yeah.
It's just too
I
intimidating.
will give a hat tip to thermogenic launcher automatic fire mode.
Okay.
I don't know if you
I don't
unlock
think I
that
have.
particular trait, but there is
No,
one
no, no.
trait for the thermo launcher which essentially gives you an automatic rate of fire.
Okay. Which is like individual rockets, I'm guessing?
It's
Not
a
three
burst
at
of
a time.
rockets in automatic fire mode.
Oh my. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and
That
that
might
is
help
and
against Nemesis.
that's just like you're just like berserker at that point. It's like God of War rage mode activated essentially.
Oh,
Like, can you
okay.
imagine
Yeah.
a carbine which is like shooting rockets instead? Essentially, it's like
Yeah, no, that's like absurd.
it's bonkers good. It's that good.
Yeah.
But the likelihood of you getting that is going to be like probably one in
Oh,
ten or
it's
something. Yeah,
a fraction of a fraction,
yeah, one in ten.
honestly.
1 in 10 would be high odds, I would say.
Yeah, considering how many times we've come across, like even on my playthrough, which you've seen quite a bit of it, it's just the odds of getting the same weapon are again. I think you mentioned this earlier, so I won't keep this for long. It's very low. The odds
Yep,
of getting the same weapon with the same
the
traits
same
and the
traits and the
same
same alt
passives and
fire,
the same odd
very
fire
unlikely.
is very low.
Yep,
It's very interesting. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. What else do you want to talk about? I think
we have.
we should definitely talk about the general story, the
Yeah,
lore.
let's just do a quick biomes and story together because
Let's
it's
do
like
that.
they're pretty much intertwined with each other, right?
Yep,
Like
yep.
you crash land on this planet, you abandon Helios, and and you forge ahead through what everyone is calling the 5 stages of grief or
I
six. I
believe
think there's
5 to 6
five.
stages of grief. Yep,
There's 5 stages of grief, which are more representative through like the bosses
yep.
and less the biomes. But I feel like each biome sort of represents her emotional strife.
And state
Like
of
if you
mind.
think and state of mind, like yeah, like it's called. They all have such depressing names. It's like overgrown ruins,
Overgrown
and
ruins.
then
It's
you
like it's
have
consuming you. Then you have the crimson wastes where like you feel barren and desolate inside, and then you have
and then you have
dereliction.
derelict.
You're just like destroyed and broken completely.
Yep.
It's just so appropriate. This game is just like you just wonder, there's a point in the game where you just like realize, okay, I was there when you started realizing when you theorize this entire concept that
Yep.
is this even real or is this happening in our mind?
It. Yeah.
And it's at that point, in that moment, when you like hit that understanding that, okay, you know what, I don't think this is all real. I think this is just a figment of our imagination or
Yeah.
something else that is of higher
It is just
significance.
because it is so deep, right? Like if you watch any space movie, or if you watch, let's take Alien, which is like the most relatable concept, right? Like she's on a ship and there is one thing that's constantly hunting her. If you remove the metaphor of a psychological trauma haunting you,
Yep,
or if you replace that for the alien, it is pretty much the same thing. She's
yep.
reliving the same nightmare
Over and over
to
in
a
cycles.
very dangerous degree in repeated cycles, right? Alien doesn't have the repeated cycles, but I guess that's the best metaphor I could come up with. It is so deep because everything is just so grueling, and it is just her struggle through the entire, her coping mechanism, also the way she speaks, right?
Oh
If
yeah.
you've seen again any space movie, if you come across, if the character comes across a weapon, they'll just be like, huh, this is a cool weapon, or this is a cool piece of equipment. And Celine is just like, I must accept this sacrifice. And I'm like, lady, that's not what you say when you pick up like leg armor.
Oh my god.
Something's like, no,
Something is
it's that,
off, but it's good.
it's
That's the
that
point. That delivery.
it is incredibly deep
Yeah.
because also the ciphers you find on the walls, right? It's not as much an alien language as much as it is her finding
Fragments of
pieces
her
of
mind.
her
It's
mind,
fragments of her
right?
mind. Yep.
It's that. And when you find an obelisk, it's a message she's trying to communicate to herself. Very cryptic, because that is how mental health battles are fought. They're not easy, they're
Yep.
pretty difficult, right?
Yep. Yep.
And it and it's just that experience of going at it over and over and over again, because that is just how grueling and difficult real life trauma can make a person feel, right? And
Absolutely.
it is just that repetitive nature of fighting back, trying to get up, dusting yourself off, falling once again, coming back, doing it all over again, and piecing it together until your mind is whole. It is that depth that is really reflected through all six biomes, with its symbolism, with its bosses, with the combat, with the colors, with the music. It gives it such a little nice egg basket. It's just a joy to
It's a
behold.
joy, absolutely. And this is what I found really interesting about the game, because this is, for me, this is off the back of Demon Souls, which also, interestingly, does not really give you a story per se. It lets you figure out the plot by itself. Of course, in a more, I would say, in a more standardized, conventional manner, as opposed to Returnal, which is a lot more fragmented in its approach.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting the way they manage to give you just enough information to keep you hooked,
Yeah.
just enough, and cryptic information. That's the best and worst part, because you're like, what the fuck are you, what's even the purpose of this game? And you're like, I gotta find out the purpose of this game.
Yeah.
And it's just, everything just comes together in a very, very succinct manner. uh,
Yeah.
right from, those ciphers, like you rightly mentioned, which they come with like those very cryptic messages. Some of them are like all caps, some of them are like small letters, and you're like, small case and low case, and you're like, what is happening? Why
Yeah.
is this so broken? Why is this communication so broken? Why is this language so broken? And you're
Mm.
like, I'm going to try and piece this together slowly and eventually. Then the scout logs, where she is, in my opinion, getting increasingly senile, because it starts
Yeah.
off with like, the scout logs start off in like a very cautionary, apprehensive, trying to understand the
Yeah.
mystery of it all kind of an approach. And
Mhm.
as the scout logs progress per biome, it's like you're talking to yourself in an almost manic, frenzied, and
Yeah.
psychotic manner, and you're like, whoa, this is getting like intense as fuck. What is happening in this game?
It's very disturbing finding a lot of the scout logs, finding a
Yep.
lot of the ciphers or the obelisks or the pillars that give you information, finding all of that, right? It's so disturbing because it's very incoherent. It is literally the ramblings of a mad woman. it
Yep.
it doesn't make sense. And when you're in like a desolate, a rain washed ruin, and that is the only sound you have going on for you, okay, and you're marching through what is nothingness, it is very, very scary.
Yep.
Which,
It's
funnily
haunting.
enough,
It's haunting almost.
it's haunting. Which, funnily enough, brings me to the other thing that's haunted in this game, which are the house
House
sequences.
sequences. Oh
If you've
yeah.
ever played, if you've ever played any of the first-person Resident Evil games,
Oh
they
man.
don't come close
Yeah.
to scaring the shit out of you. This
The
is
house
more PT
sequences.
Silent Hills.
Yeah, the house sequences in this game are, they're maddeningly. I don't know. It's just the air. It's in the
Yeah,
air. The sense of tension that's in the air when you're like in the house sequence. The entire. I think the introduction. That's one of the funniest and scariest, I would say, instances in the game, where you're like,
yeah,
you've crash landed on an alien planet, and suddenly you, for the first time, when you enter the room where you have the house, and you're
yeah,
like, what the actual fuck is this house doing in this biome? What is
yep,
this? What is happening in this game? And you're like, trying to unravel it, and then suddenly you enter, and they're like, it pans to first person, and you're like, oh, okay, nope,
yeah.
nope. and you can't escape because it's a locked door behind you. And
It's locked,
it's
and
just, yeah, it's just
it's so
crazy.
atmospheric because
It's
it's
very
directing you with
atmospheric.
light. It takes away your UI. There is very little feedback.
Yep.
It's just
Complete
silent
immersion into
everywhere.
her mind space as a character, I feel, and her
Yeah,
memories as a
which
character.
somehow should have been like the first indicator that she's not in her right mind. There is something going on with her, right?
Yep.
And I feel like everyone who played it at that point missed it or thought of it for a second and just brushed it away. Like,
Yep.
maybe
I think it gets
maybe
very. I think it's like, I personally thought that Celine has crash landed genuinely, and she's
yeah,
hallucinating. Like my impression
yep,
was she's hallucinating about being in the house,
yeah,
but
yep.
then I realized, okay, the actual game itself is it's a hallucination in its
Is
entirety.
pretty much right. No,
Yeah.
but I agree with your theory for the hallucination thing, like, or your initial thought, because that's what happens when you're isolated on. It's like Robinson Crusoe.
Yep.
It's like
Absolutely.
you'll make a pineapple or a coconut your friend.
Yep.
It's that you'll do anything to cope, right? But then when you find out what's actually behind the curtain, so to speak, it's very very messed up,
It's
or
very
behind the
disturbing.
door.
Very disturbing. And there are the
Yeah,
sequences in the house itself where you like pick up that very cryptic cube-like thing, and you
yeah,
crush it, and it like
which
dissolves
you
into
just
like alien nothingness, and you're like, what is this
yeah.
game, man? What is happening in this game?
I still haven't figured out the significance of that cube. That happens like what,
It's
twice?
Yep. It's happened in all sequences for me. Like in every
Yeah, I
sequence.
think okay, maybe I missed it, I
So
guess. I don't
it
know.
could it's not a mandatory object to pick up anyway. So I think if you miss it, you
Yeah,
miss
it's
it.
optional. You
Yeah.
miss it,
But
yeah.
if you spot it, you can pick it up, and you're like, you do the same thing over. You just like crush the cube and tentacles all over you,
Yeah.
essentially.
Funnily enough, I did not expect a roguelike to have such a deep story.
Nor did I.
Like, honestly, I think Hades was, of course, proves better story wise for
Absolutely agree on that.
um,
Yep.
roguelikes. But then again, I also feel like you can't make a roguelike without having some Greek influence in it nowadays.
However subtle it might be. Oh
Yep.
man.
But
Yeah.
very good lore. I feel like the lore explanation can be left to maybe you can do that.
Multiple
Uh,
interpretations. So
yeah,
here's the thing, right?
it's
Because there are some instances of the lore interpretation that I felt were very simple as opposed to the complex ones that I've seen so far, and
yeah,
obviously the interpretations I've made myself. I think the most straightforward interpretation is obviously the one that we discussed, which is all of this is happening in your head,
yeah,
and it's all stages of grief, and
yeah,
obviously there is a lot of uh, heavy implication to Greek mythology. If you look at the data log specifically,
yeah,
in detail, if you read them in detail, lot of hat tips to Greek mythology and references to instances in Greek mythology. The names, obviously, no guesses there.
yeah,
All of them, including the boss names, including Celine. Obviously, Celine is Greek, American Greek.
yeah.
Uh, there are very heavy influences of Greek mythology throughout the game. Not on the face, unlike obviously Hades. Of course, the titular character itself is a Greek god, so it is bound to be heavy in dripping in Greek mythology. But yeah, it's very unique in its implementation. I don't think it's on the face. It actually took me, I think, 70% of the game to figure out, oh hey, you know what? There's a lot of Greek mythology over here, and I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, and then I started piecing it together. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't think about it that way.
yeah. I
So
mean, I picked up on the Greek stuff, but I didn't read too much into it until you brought
I
it
did
up.
not read too much
I
into
was
it.
like,
Yep.
Atropos, Helios, Selene, Thea. Sounds about right. These are all, they're very
Yeah.
Greek. They're just Greek. I was
Yep.
just like,
Yep.
okay, fine. This might have something to do with how maybe someone was obsessed with Greek mythology in the developing department.
Yep. Yep.
And then when you mentioned like, there's a lot more than just names there now. Seems about right.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very nicely done where they don't make the entire. At no point does the story really overwhelm the experience. You know what I'm saying? Where when I say that
Yeah.
they don't, it's a very fine balance that they had to maintain. I feel I don't think they could have done this game like Hades, because Hades is a lot of
Um,
emphasis on story and dialogue.
yeah.
because the
Hades,
mechanics are
you
very straightforward in my opinion with Hades.
yeah, you constantly talk to people in
Yep,
Hades.
it's
You're
very
meant to talk
conversational.
to people in
It's
Hades.
very conversational.
You
It's
can't
very
progress without
conversational.
talking.
It's very conversational. It's very story driven and it's very narrative driven, is the way I would look at this. And here
Yeah.
also it is narrative driven, but it's very isolated narration. It's very haunting singular narration. It's just one character's narration of the entire instance that they're
You're
going through.
yeah, you're basically playing her inner monologue through a mental episode,
And
I
a video
guess.
game in that sense and in the
Yeah.
final output itself. Oh
Yeah.
man, what a game! What a game! It is.
What a game.
It is. It is. In terms of the actual story endings themselves, I think it's very fitting. I don't know if
Hmm.
you've reached the secret ending itself. Have you,
No, I
or
have
have you
not.
seen it? Have
Not
you
yet.
spoiled it
I've
for
seen
yourself?
it. I've seen it because I
Okay.
beat the game once and I don't know when I'm gonna go back to it. But yeah, I'll inch my way towards that secret ending. But
Yep.
I know what's behind the door
Yep.
of the car.
Yep. Yep. So it's very fitting that I don't think either ending is a good ending per se. It's a very interesting
Yeah.
way. It's just raw. It's just a lie ending as I call it, or the
Yeah.
coping ending as I call it, versus the acceptance ending as I call it.
Those are the best ways to put it, I feel.
Yep. And,
There
and
is how you cope and there is how you accept,
that's how
I
you
guess.
accept, and that's the only way
Mm,
out of the grief, in my opinion.
yeah.
So very very interesting. I
Very
and
deep.
like you rightly mentioned, uh, I did not go into this game expecting a story. Honestly,
I
I expected an arcade bullet hole, high budget AAA shooter,
yeah.
and I was pleasantly surprised to find there's actually detail put into it. And when I say
Yeah,
detail,
like
I don't put it lightly. I say like buckets of detail, right? That's what this game really gives at you in instances, in very like fleeting instances. And you're like, in every cycle, every run you make, you discover something more about the world uh,
yeah.
that is Atropos in its entirety.
I just feel like people didn't talk about this enough. Even when it came out. Like I saw a couple of reviews and
Yep.
then radio
And
silence, right?
okay, so this is where I'm going to sort of segue into, maybe we can close on this topic, which
Yep.
is this game for everyone? And I don't think this game is for everyone. I don't think that this kind of a game is everyone's cup of tea. And I
Yep.
will not be surprised if a lot of people. I mentioned this to you, and I think you also agree with me on this. That
Yeah.
for a lot of people, the threshold is going to be Biome 3.
Yes.
And if they can have, if a person has the resilience to crack past Biome 3 and beat
Mm.
Biome 3, I think they will finish the game. But if they
Yep.
cannot, I don't think that people will even finish the game in some cases. So even when I look at like
Yeah.
reviews on like random Reddit threads and YouTube comments and whatever not on the internet, uh, a lot of people simply, some people like just baffle me. They're like, oh hey, I finished this game like 9 deaths, and I'm like, what the fuck? How did you even do that shit?
How did you do
How did
that?
you do that? You're like a hacker or something. What did you do? And then there are people who are like, this is like my 100th try and I'm still on Biome 2. And I'm like, oh, that's like atrociously bad. I'm not even, I'm
Yeah.
bad, but I'm not that bad either. And it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's a very interesting, experiment, I think, in gaming and difficulty. Because the
Mm.
game doesn't give you difficulty. And I think Demon Souls also was in a similar way in where it,
Yeah.
but with Demon Souls, obviously the difficulty comes in with character variance.
It depends on how you play.
It depends on how you play.
Also, like, yeah, not to sound like one of those journalists, but like it does borrow a lot from a traditional Souls game. Like
Absolutely.
not just
Absolutely.
thematically. It makes you work hard to beat shit. Like you can so just like let's take Demon Souls since even you've played it. You can beat the game with a dagger, with an
Yep.
unupgraded dagger. It's going to be hard. Just like you can beat the game with the pistol, right? You can beat Returnal with the pistol throughout.
Yep.
It's just going to be a fucking pain in the ass. And I just feel like, yeah, if you're up for that, you're up for that. If you're not, there's always something else to do.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, coming to what you said, right? Is it everyone's cup of tea? I don't think so either. Because, and I'm not saying casual gamer versus experienced hardcore. That's bullshit. I just feel like if you are interested in the game as a player, if the mechanics work for you, if you understand how it works, if you do exactly what it wants you to do, and I'm not saying it is going to be tell you what to do. It's going to throw so many hints and give you so much variety. But it's even in its limitlessness, it is very limited, and that's the beauty of it.
Yep.
It makes you, you know how they say less is more? It sometimes makes you live through that proverb. And that is
Absolutely agree.
where the game really shines. You can carry just one gun.
Yeah, that's the
Like
beauty of it,
Doom,
isn't it?
You have 12 guns, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
like
the variance element of Doom. It's like insane in its own right.
exactly. But this, you have to plan. It gives
Yeah.
you so little, but you can do so much with so little. And it's gorgeous. I feel like, yes, it's not everyone's cup of tea. It requires a whole lot of patience and a whole lot of reading tutorials, which you should do, unlike me. Um,
Don't do the mini dash, guys. Hat tip.
don't do the mini dash. There is like a circle button which you can press and
For a
hold.
longer duration and you can dash longer.
I suggest you
Guess what?
hold always.
You can do that even before Biome 1 even begins.
Biome 2. Yeah.
Oh man,
And
that's
yeah,
hilarious.
important note, never skip a cutscene because you'll not be able to watch them again.
Oh yeah,
Not that
absolutely.
I did this, I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's a good tip for people who are just about beginning the game. Yeah, and
Yeah.
want to know it
And
more.
it's a great thing for new players, because I know there are going to be a lot of people who go into this game not wanting a story, because that's exactly, like, I was going to say this earlier, but I guess I missed. When we first saw the trailer at, I think it was a state of play event where they
Yep, yep,
announced
yep.
Returnal last September
Last
or
last
August, I
around
think.
1 year ago at this point of time. Yep.
Yeah. It was, it just looked like a control roguelike. Like
Absolutely agree.
we had completely
Very
written it
little
off.
insight into like the story itself. Like nothing was given to us
Yeah,
in terms of what's going to happen in the game itself, besides being like an alien control roguelike experience. That's about it.
pretty much. Yeah. It just felt like, oh, look, this is like, she'll probably control like Jesse Faden from Control, and you're just on this planet which is a roguelike, and you have to beat bosses and get to the end, and that's it, right? Because Housemarque has made games before that, like before this, which are a lot like that.
Hmm.
Um, which is just Resogun, and then there was another which I can't remember, but you can see Returnal's inspiration in their previous game.
Yep.
It is exactly that, but it felt like they got really good writers this time around, and they were like, "Huh, we can make magic here, so let's." Because all they advertised back then was, I think, the DualSense and the RTX and the sound and 3D audio and the visuals and the graphics, which are, yes, they're fucking brilliant. But no one really speaks about, like, no one spoke about what this game actually was back then. I feel like marketing took a hit.
Yep. I
But
think I think it's incidentally it. I mean, it works both ways, right? Because in its own funny way, the people who played the game then came up to endorse the game and say, "Hey, you know what? It's not just this. There's also the entire story element, which is not bad. It's a
yeah,
very good story. It might not be your
yeah,
God of War, Last of Us levels of stories, no doubt about it, but it is still extremely enticing and something that keeps you hooked up till the very end. And I think that's
yep.
testament to how much probably Housemarque has grown. Enough to obviously have them acquired by Sony now in today's
Yep.
latest endeavors.
It's such a proud moment, I bet, for
Yep.
them. And also, like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take secondhand pride here and be like, yeah, I am proud of them. Because, dude, this game is no joke. It
Yeah,
is
I think it is that
so
game that like
underrated.
it's the game that's helped them ascend that echelon into that makes them feel like, okay, you know what, now we're like one of the creme de la creme of developers when it comes to
Yeah.
video game industry.
No
So
longer a second party studio.
no longer a second party studio. All right, I think we can spend like 10 minutes on some of the things that we did like about the game, and we can segue that
Mm,
into closing off.
yeah. What I didn't like about the game, there's very little I didn't like about the game. I didn't like the shotgun. And I
No
can
one
talk
likes a
about that
shotgun.
for ages. No one likes the shotgun. A couple of balancing issues, a couple of things that just felt like oversights on their part, like the blade balancer, right? Like
Hmm.
that, and the adrenaline shield, like we spoke of. It is just, so when you get to adrenaline 5, you get a shield, which, again, I didn't know this because I never read tutorials. But you get a shield, and then once you get hit, the shield wears off. It just feels like that could have been recoverable, or that should have been something you recover, say, in after killing 5 enemies or 10 enemies,
Yep,
like you do.
yep.
Another thing I don't think the game makes very clear is how many enemies you have to kill to go up an adrenaline level.
It
I got
actually
to know
makes it
to
very clear. It's three.
yeah, it's 3, right?
It's three.
Where
It's very
does it
clear.
say
The
this?
tutorial.
You see, this is my problem. I never read the fucking tutorial. So for every 3 enemies, you get one
So
adrenaline slot.
you get 0.3 adrenaline per enemy, and so the
Okay,
moment you kill like the fourth enemy, you cross to the next adrenaline level essentially.
pretty much, right? I didn't know this. I genuinely didn't know this. I found out today.
And you've beaten the
And I was
game.
just like, I've beaten the game, okay? Like
Oh man,
it's
that's
so
funny.
weird. Yeah. A blade balancer,
Yep.
which is again, you get a melee lightsaber, which is very cool.
Hmm.
Um, and it's very handy because some enemies have shields, right? And you cannot, unless you have the shield breaker alt fire, you can't break through that. I'm just thinking if they had introduced, I mean, of course, that scenario would have been very different. But it's just like, what if there is an important item or a permanent item behind one of those orange shield doors, and you don't have the blade balancer, right? Of course, they wrote the game in a specific way so that it doesn't appear behind those doors. But if so, here's the thing, right? Like games can be buggy. Games can be horribly buggy, and
Yep.
if you get one of those doors, and of course it's a roguelike, so you can just choose to die and come back later, but there's
Yep.
the odds of finding that again are again like you're just it's a gamble, right? um you miss out on a lot, and I feel like the blade balancer could have been a permanent item upgrade that you could get like in biome 4 as a reward, like okay, you've crossed the halfway point, this is your checkpoint, you can begin here, but here's something you can carry along the way. That would have been very cool. Other things I did not like may have to be some of the parasites.
Hmm.
Interesting, very interesting mechanic, but
Yep.
really makes you second guess your playthrough later on.
Yeah. Parasites I found was a very interesting risk reward uh, experience, right?
Yeah.
Uh, is that it? Is that your end of the?
Yeah, yeah, I'm done.
All right.
I
So
have very few gripes.
with me, yeah, I broadly agree with you that the actual game itself doesn't have too many drawbacks. Uh,
Yeah.
100% agree with you on the blade balancer should have been a permanent artifact. I would have
Mm.
been okay if they had given me the permanent artifact upgrade even in biome 6. That's fine
Yep.
by me, but don't make me then go and invest opolites in and obviously wait for the RNG element to kick in where I have to once again find the blade balancer if I have to
Mm.
come across the orange glowy door once again in some biome that I want to access. Yeah, blade balancer definitely.
Yeah.
The platinum trophy, it's a big put off. It's a very big put off.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
you
Forgot
know,
about that.
it's almost like the game has shot itself in the foot in a way because it does
Mm.
everything so well. And this is incidentally one. I mean, obviously, I'm playing on the I'm a console gamer. I'm a new console gamer, as I call myself, right? Someone who is. I was never particularly fond. I was never someone who's been. I would classify as a trophy hunter, like
Mm.
in my life ever. Like it's one of the biggest reasons why I would say that I've got a PlayStation console, where I'm like, okay, you know what? I want to be that someone who uh, at least the games that I really want to, I will definitely go and hunt for every trophy.
Yeah.
Uh, as an aspiring trophy hunter for Returnal, I am bummed because the
Yeah.
RNG is just it's just frustratingly bad. And how I mean, okay, so for those of you who don't know, the context here essentially is that in order to complete the 6 biome trophies, the 6 survey trophies as they're called in the game itself, you need to essentially collect. You need to find like you need to do like collectible hunts in each of the biomes, and this is where it gets frustrating because there is a probability and there's a high probability that in a single run you will not even find the collectible you're looking for because
Yep.
the room that the collectible is in might or might not generate in that specific run, and there is no
Yeah.
way in which you would know if that room is even there till you finish the room itself, till you finish the biome itself.
Yeah.
And you could essentially face a scenario where you finish an entire biome trying to find that room with that specific collectible, and you will end up realizing, oh hey, this specific run in this specific biome didn't even generate that particular room, and
Yeah.
by that time you've sunk in like 20 minutes of your time.
Yeah.
You're like, well, cool, I guess I'll try again some other day then. and
Yeah,
that's
that
one biome. I'm talking about six in this case, six biomes, and we're talking about what
three
60
different types of items.
60 plus collectibles. That's an
Oh,
obscene number of.
that's it's way
Yeah,
more than 60. There's just 80 ciphers in the game, so
yeah, so that's like it's like almost 100 collectibles that you need to essentially find,
yeah,
and that's
it's a
just.
lot.
So I've seen a lot of people, a lot of comments on people who have platinumed the game already. They've claimed that they've beaten the game twice, but it's one game which is the main game plus secret ending in like 30 hours, 40 hours, which is roughly what even I have done in my case. But they've taken almost an additional 60, 70 hours on top of that to just finish off the entire platinum trophy, which is just
Yeah,
bonkers in my opinion. It's just like a very. I think they just like didn't balance that enough or they didn't think about it enough that uh,
yeah.
it would come back to probably be a little difficult to accomplish. Hey, they might have done it deliberately. It could be a deliberate attempt to
Get people to play more, talk
because the
about it more.
because the implication is ultimately. I mean, I read the comment that I shared with you this morning where the
It's
implication is that you need to comb through every instance of your mind to break from the loop essentially in its entirety, and that's what the game is trying
yeah,
to feed you. But it could have been a little more balanced, is my opinion on that particular note.
I agree. I yeah, I agree. I did miss out on that, but yeah, I do agree. I just feel like the trophies should have been relatively doable. I mean, these are doable. It's just the time commitment that you
It's
need to
not.
put in,
That's
right?
the funny part, right? It's not the trophies themselves that are hard per se.
It's
They're
yeah,
pretty straightforward. Each trophy I would say is very straightforward.
yeah, yep. It
But
doesn't even like getting these survey trophies, right?
yeah,
It doesn't even force you to go through all the bosses again. It's just
but it's just
even the
tedious.
s- even the secret ending doesn't force you to go through all the bosses. It's just the last one, and it's still so frustrating.
Yeah, yeah. It's just minor oversight. It's just like these very little inklings of
Mhm.
instances that make you feel like, man, fuck, why is this like this? Why is this particular feature in the game? Why is this particular element in the game? And
Yeah,
that's just about it. Very, very minute gripes to the game per se. That one, of course, being the blade balancer, one, of course, being uh, the seemingly
adrenaline shield.
the adrenaline shield and the seemingly endless hunt for the platinum trophy. Uh,
Yeah,
but besides that, I really have very little that I can complain about as far as the game itself is concerned, to be honest.
yeah. Takes a little bit of work, but
It takes work,
if
oh,
you
no doubt
get there,
about it. But when you get there,
if you get there, you
it's
get
a
there.
bloody rewarding experience. All right, let's wrap this up, Kedar. Final verdict
Yes.
on Returnal.
It's fucking
And let
amazing. Go
and let
play
me
it now.
and let me ask you one
No,
question. Let me
hashtag
ask you
not sponsored.
let me ask you one question at this instance. Do you think it
Yeah.
is GOTY material?
I don't think it's game of the year material, but I do think it will win some awards because okay, final verdict, do not miss out on final verdict, sorry. Do not miss out on some incredible voice acting.
Yep.
There is just it is such a technical masterpiece. Like I think we spoke about visuals a little bit earlier, but do not miss out on voice acting. I really feel like I think her name is Jane Perry.
Jane
She
Perry.
can
Yep.
really she can really take the cake.
Incidentally, Jane Perry, for
May
those of you who were not aware, we were not aware of this. In fact, Jane Perry
Yeah.
has also voiced a couple of our other memorable characters in the video game space, including Diana Burnwood from the Hitman franchise and Rogue from Cyberpunk 2077. And
Yep.
that's just a few among the others that are quite
Just a
prominent as well.
few.
Yeah, just a few of them.
And and like I said earlier, right? I think we were speaking earlier, and I was like, yeah, it's relatively easier to speak to someone else, but when you're trying to emote inner conflict with yourself, it's just an inner
It's
monologue, right?
just spectacular.
A- And you have to put down every emotion down pat, like flawlessly, like you would talk to yourself in frustration, anger, sadness, happiness, whatever. It is just so flawless when she does it. It's mesmerizing. It's
Yep, 100%
incredible.
agree. 100%
And I
agree.
feel and I feel like my final verdict is do not miss out on this. Do not miss out on any single part of this game. Admire it for what it is. Don't criticize it too much. Um because you're not going to have fun if you criticize it too much. If you are frustrated, take a break, come back and beat the game because it is such a rewarding experience. it is like nothing else. It
Yep.
is. I have never played a game like this before. I can I can write this down, sign a paper, legally get it attested, and say that. I have never played a game like this before. It is very different. Even though it does a whole lot of things like any other roguelike, it is still very different. It's
Yep.
very unique.
Yep. I broadly agree. It has borrowed a lot. It's taken a lot of inspiration from very classic games, I would say, in their own respective genres, and it has taken those. I would say it's taken the best parts of some of the best games in their respective
Yeah.
genres, and woven them together into a uh, nice little material that you could really enjoy to its fullest extent. Yeah, I love it. I think as one of the first experiences on a PlayStation in its entirety for me, because this is probably
Yeah.
still like one of the top, like one of the first 10 games that I've played on a console in its entirety. Uh,
Yeah.
very good experience. Absolutely love the fact that uh, it at this point for me it feels like with Demon Souls, having completed Demon Souls, Tsushima, God of War, and now Returnal, I can safely say that money well spent on the PlayStation
Money
5.
well spent.
Money well spent,
Yeah.
and I would gladly. I was very apprehensive about the $70 price tag, as I believe it was at one point. It was
Yeah.
$70, right? It is $70 if I'm not
It
wrong.
is
I
$70.
would say, I would not mind paying that $10 extra, honestly, for like Returnal.
Yeah.
It
I
is
got
what
this. I got this as a birthday present. I have
Kedar's
absolutely
a
no
lucky
regret.
guy. I spent $70. Believe me, I spent $70. Buy it, play it. If you might hate it at some point, if you hate it at some point, pause and come back again. Play Demon Souls in the meanwhile. You might just beat Demon Souls and come back. That might just work in
Yep.
your favor, like me, like the madman
That's
that I
how it
am.
works. Yep. But
But
I would honestly buy this game all over again.
yes, absolutely. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. Do not miss. Play it, enjoy it. Try to platinum it if that's your thing, and if you do, let us know in the comments because
Please do, because
it is
we'll
an
need
interesting
help.
game. We need help. It is an interesting game, and we want to know what you think about the game. And
Yeah.
with that, we shall wrap up on our segment for Eternal, and we will see you very soon with another one similar in format to Demon Souls as a game. And
Yes.
I'm sure Kedar is
I am hyped for that one too.
massively hyped for that one, as am I, because I have
Yeah.
done my first Soulsborne experience, and Kedar has
One Souls
Kedar has
veteran and one
Kedar,
Souls noob.
Kedar has very gently nudged me into the realm of Bloodborne after Demon Souls, and I'm like, thank you, my friend, thank you. I shall continue to suffer this eternal loop of dying in video games all over again. But yeah, look forward to that. It's going to be up very soon on our channel.
This this Returnal loop.
This never ending, this eternal return to the Soulsborne franchise and the Souls like
Yeah.
experience is just mesmerizing. But hey, look forward to
All
it.
right.
It's gonna come up later this week, I believe, and we can't wait to share what we have on that front. So with that, see you soon and stay safe. Take care.
Break the cycle.
Break the cycle.